Welcome everyone to the Canarian International Meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Mossy and I am an alcoholic.
And I am Mick, and I also am an alcoholic, serving as your secretary with Mossy today. Please join me in a few moments silence to remember the still suffering alcoholic inside and outside the meeting.
And Jane is going to read the preamble for us.
Hi, my name is Jane and I am so grateful for being here. The preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Thank you, Mossy, for letting me do this.
And a warm welcome goes out to any newcomers or anyone returning to Alcoholics Anonymous. The chat is now disabled until the end of the meeting. If you have any issues with security or anything, just let one of the co-hosts know. And at that, we're going to jump ahead and hand you over to EILEEN. Where are you gone, EILEEN? There you are, EILEEN. So it's a pleasure to have you here with us, EILEEN, today. And I know you celebrated on the 12th of August your 35-year sobriety. The three of us come into class of 89. So that's it. Take it away, EILEEN, for as long as you wish.
Thanks, Mossy. My name is EILEEN and I'm an alcoholic, and it's so lovely to see you. You're certainly on the you're on my people I love in AA list for sure. So it's always lovely to see you. I'm going to, if it's all right with everyone, I'm just going to read from the big book, so that if I don't say anything, at least you'll have heard. I know you'll have heard something. So I'm just going to read what I would have come in at. We knew it as 449. At last, acceptance proved to be the key to my drinking problem. After I had been around AA for 7 months, tapering off alcohol and pills, not finding the program working very well, I was finally able to say, "Oh God, okay, God, it is true that I, of all people, strange as it may seem, and even though I didn't give up my permission, really am an alcoholic of sorts. And it's all right with me. Now what am I going to do about it?" When I stopped living in the problem and began living in the answer, the problem went away. From that moment on, I have not had a single compulsion to drink. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me, and I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at this moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake. Until I could accept my alcoholism, I could not stay sober. Unless I accept life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and in my attitudes. Thank you for listening to me. Yeah, let's see. I was thinking, what am I going to say? And I suppose I was doing a meeting recently, and I realized that I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for alcoholism. I wouldn't exist on this planet. My family was kind of steeped in alcoholism. My uncle was an alcoholic, and he would head off to London and disappear, and then turn up broken and battered from drinking as a young man. And then, you know, all hell would break loose again in Galway, and he'd head off to London. And one of these times that he headed off to London, he didn't come back. So my father was sent over to find him. And he found him on the streets in the 1950s. That's where he had ended up. He met, my father being in London, he met my mother, who also lived in London, who was from London. And so I owe my life to my very existence to alcoholism. And my what was I going to say? My uncle got sober. He got sober and he died sober. He had a brain tumor, and he died when he was about 9 years sober. And my very first introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous was when I was a little girl. And I was about 10, I think, when he died. I know he was 11 years sober and I was about 9 when he died. And he used to take me around the town with him, and we'd go all around Galway, and we would go into these men, and because it was all men then, although there were women in AA at the time who knew him and who talked to me very fondly of him afterwards. But we'd go in and we'd visit all these people, and there'd be laughter and crack, and they'd always be so nice, and it was just one of those things. And he knew everybody, and what I didn't know was that he was going around the town, you know, dropping into people's place of work, showing the niece off. Like, I didn't know that at the time. Look who I have with me today. And when he died, it was AA members who they were there at the funeral, all these men in their black suits and ties. And when he died, what I remember, it was a big funeral, and what I remember about him, because he was a young man when he died, they just kept saying, he made it. He made it. And I was thinking, what the hell are they talking about? And what they were saying was he died sober. And for somebody who had had the story he had, it was an extraordinary thing that he died sober. And just to park my uncle for the moment, on my mother's side of the family, her father was an alcoholic and a gambler. And her mother died shortly after she was born, and he couldn't or wouldn't take her. So she was put into an orphanage in London, and she grew up there during the war years. And she had a dog's life, really, you know, but she gave him a home at one stage, and he wanted to come and live in Ireland, and my father wouldn't have any of it. So he ended up living on his own in London, and he ended up on the streets as well. And he died, he was a John Doe when he died on the streets in London. And that's where they found, you know, they didn't know who he was. I don't know where he's buried. Nobody knows where he's buried. And so alcoholism is in my family in that way, you know, that it colors everything. It colors everything in my life. And when one of the things I was raised on the story of Uncle Jackie and the alcoholism. My father stopped drinking, he switched to medication, and he never got sober. He never went into recovery. But I was warned never to drink. That was the big thing in our family. No matter what happens, never, ever, ever, ever drink. And I'd be told the stories of Uncle Jackie and the frothing at the mouth and the fitting from alcoholism and being beaten up and torn up and being lost in London. And it was all this stories and stories and stories. So I was adamant that I was never going to drink. And I was sort of an alcoholic waiting to happen, because all my friends started drinking when I was 13. And I didn't want to drink because I was afraid of becoming an alcoholic. And so I hung on for about 4 years, and it was just a week after my 17th birthday, I picked up my first drink. And I had a small, tiny top of a glass of cider, and I had to be sent home in a taxi. It had such a huge effect on me. But what I for the first time in my life, I was terrorized. I was terrorized by life. I wasn't able to live in this world. I was so frightened of everything. And I was, you know, what I understand my alcoholism to be now is that I go to extremes. So I feel everything extremely. I react extremely. And I'm not able to get into the center. I'm not able to get into a place of balance on my own and without help. But I didn't know that, you know, I didn't know that. I hadn't a clue. And I just permanently felt under fire. And, you know, before I ever picked up a drink, I used to go to a pub here in Galway called the Cellar. And from the moment I'd never been, because we were very Catholic, very religious, and there was never drink, and it was, you know, oh, stop. We were always on our knees and in the church. And I'd never been in a pub really. And when I went into that pub, I'll never forget going into it, and the peace and the darkness and the smoke. And it was like I found a little dark corner and I nestled myself in. And from the moment I went into the pub, I stopped going to school, you know. I was on the Mitch all the time. I'd walk in from, I was going to the school outside, and I'd walk into town, and I'd go in for the afternoon in my school uniform, and I'd sit in the pub with a Coke in front of me. And then go home when I was meant to go home. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I did that for 2 years, 2 solid years. And I was in terrible trouble in school and nearly got expelled and all kinds of things. But I still hung on in there, you know. And you know, eventually I picked up a drink. And when I picked up a drink, I can honestly say it was the first moment's peace I ever had in my life. It was like I went from black and white into Technicolor. It was the best. I was free. I was free. I didn't care. And I heard it said in AA, everything I know I've heard in AA. I've heard it said that feeling, that the greatest feeling ever when I picked up my first drink. And this is not everyone's story, but it was my story. That I chased that feeling. Right up to my last drink, I chased that feeling. All I ever wanted was that feeling again. That's all I wanted. I wanted to be out of it. I wanted not to have to deal with anything. I wanted not to feel anything. And I found this great thing, alcohol. And the second time I drank, and I was thinking about this recently, I was out in the Aran Islands here off the West Coast, and we had flagons of cider, and I was very, very hungover. It was, after that, it was a long time before I had hangovers again. And I was wrecked, and I was cold, and I was frozen. I had no sleeping bag, and I was in a tent, and I crawled out in bits, and I got 2 empty flagons, and I put them on a rock, and I took a photograph, and I said, "This is my altar, and this is my new God." And that was the truth, like, you know, because I found something that made sense out of my life. And it made my life possible. And it made me feel like I can do anything. I can be anyone. I can go anywhere. I can have anything. And excuse me. And that was a feeling that I chased for all the years that I drank. I didn't drink for a very long time. I drank for about 10 years. Actually, I stopped drinking a week after my 27th birthday. So it was actually 10 years. And during that time, it was kind of like I was slowly trading everything off. You know, I didn't know it. I was getting into small bits of trouble. I wasn't long drinking, and a friend of mine my best friend at the time, wouldn't do something I wanted her to do. So I picked up a glass in the pub and I fired it at her because I wanted it to hit her face. And it didn't, it missed her because I was too drunk really. And I got a fright after that, and I stopped drinking for a little while. So I had this ability to, you know, get into a little bit of trouble. And then I go, oh yeah, so I won't get drunk, I won't drink. And it seemed like I could do that. And the other thing I should say that after the first drink, I woke up, the first time I took a drink, I woke up in the morning and I thought, this is great. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not like my uncle. No fits. I'm not frothing at the mouth. There's nothing going on. You know, there's no DTs. There's nothing. I'm great. I'm not an alcoholic. So from that moment, that first morning, I gave myself permission to drink. But for a long time, I could stop. I would get into trouble and I would stop. And excuse me. And my life, I don't know how it happened. That somehow all that mattered was that I could get drunk. and be drunk, and that I traded my ambition, I traded my dignity, I traded my hope, I traded connection with other people. I slowly kind of, it's like, you know, somebody, the greatest thief of all time knocked on the door and said, "Can I have your hopes for the future?" And I just said, "Well, can I stay drinking?" And I was told you couldn't. And I just handed it all over. And I became somebody I never wanted to be. I became unreliable. I became a liar. I became dishonest. And it was like I was like a kind of, I felt like a rat that was trying to live in the floorboards or something, you know. I couldn't get into the world. I was gone. I was gone. And the drink was never like that very first time. I couldn't stay drunk. If I could have stayed drunk, well, honestly, I wouldn't be here, you know. But I'd have to get on with life. And I couldn't get on with life because I was always dealing with this untreated alcoholism. And I was feeding alcohol into, you know, I was just feeding the beast, really, you know. I couldn't function in the world. And I had a long-term boyfriend at the time, and I treated him so badly. And I had a series of boyfriends. I was always I dumped him, and then there were more, and I dumped them, and then I decided it was them that was the problem in my life. And then I decided it was Dublin. I went to London briefly, and I couldn't. That was the only time I ever got afraid to drink, because I was on my own. And the only way I could sleep was if I sat in my own in the room and drank, and I'd pass out. And that was the only time I ever thought, oh, be careful. So I went home to Galway, came home to Galway, and I met people who drank like me. And we lived this kind of wild, drunken life. And I hung around with a lot of women who were, and men, but there were women really, who were mostly my friends, and they were all in terrible trouble, you know. They were women whose children had been taken off them, or there were women who were fighting in the courts for there was just all this chaos going on. And there was stuff, you know, a lot of these women had babies, and it was just, oh my God, you know, it was just dreadful, really, you know. The kids were, you know, they'd be in the pub asleep under the table, and it was just this rotten life that we all just mucked along in. And then my friend that I was working with was going back to where she was from, to America, and I bummed money basically, and I headed off after her. And I arrived in Boston with $60 in my pocket, and no place to stay, no work, no nothing. And the first thing, I should say, I flew from London, and I wet myself on the plane. That's the truth, like, you know. And I had a bottle of gin that I was bringing over as a present, and I drank it. You know, it was just, I have no recollection of arriving into America. None. And I went missing because my friend couldn't find me, and she was raging. She said, "Where were you? Everybody else is gone." I didn't know where I was. And that's how America started. And I finally arrived into Boston with my $60, no place to stay, no job, no nothing. And all I could say is, where will I get a pint? You know, there's so much bullshit, you know. There was so much of the kind of the hard woman image going on, and the pretense going on. All that stuff was happening. And I settled into Boston. You know, I got into the Irish community, and they kind of gave me a place to stay and set me up with work and all this. And in no time at all, they all dumped me. Nobody wanted anything to do with me. And I was drinking. I was in Ireland. I had no money for drink, so I only had 2 or 3 days where I could drink properly, and then I would beg whatever, food or whatever was going the next few days, or, and then we get drunk and get the dole and get drunk. And that was my life. But now I was waitressing and I was able to make money and drink, because they were just giving you dollars and I go buy drink, more dollars, go buy drink. And then I got a job in an office, and I was terrified in the office. And I got very paranoid. I thought that they knew about my drinking. And I left the office, and it was, I can't even begin to describe that time when I was drinking, because I stopped. I used to try to keep the drink going, and I was, down to 3 or 4 hours sleep a night, because I'd get up the next day, I'd be so sick from drink, and then all of a sudden, all those things that I heard being talked about with my uncle, with the DTs and the fits, and the shakes and the hangovers and the long white rats crawling out of the mattress and all that stuff, that was now in my life. And I lived in this apartment that had no door, and it was a mattress on the floor, and I was 26 years old, and I was just desperately trying to keep it going. And I really, really believed that what mattered was that I could get drunk. That truly was the only thing I wanted. And I was in this place, the place I was staying in, I couldn't pay the rent anymore. And it was July and summer, and my landlord said, well, you're going to have to leave at the end of August. And I thought, that's fine. There's loads of people sleeping out in the streets. I'll just sleep out there. That's fine. They seem to have a nice life. That's the truth. Like, it seemed good to me. It seemed good that people were begging, and I thought I could beg at the end of the escalator, and that's where drink brought me. That's where I was at the end of my drinking. And I drank. I went on this kind of 5-week bender where I don't remember sleeping, but I must have slept. And I was so sick from drink that, and what happened in that 5 weeks, actually, sometime before that, is I couldn't get drunk anymore. It didn't matter how much I was putting into me. It didn't matter. I just could not get drunk anymore. And I was in hell now, I was really in hell, because the drink stopped working. And I went home one night, and the woman who was my friend who I went over wasn't there. She used to be killing me. And I every night I used to go to bed, and I used to take 3 aspirin before I go to bed, so I'd deal with the hangover the next day. And I bought very little at that time, but I had bought 100 aspirin, and I swallowed the whole lot. I ate them all of them. Because I couldn't get drunk, and I thought, at least if I do this, maybe I'll get a few hours where I'll sleep and I'll be able to be out of it. And by some miracle, she turned up that night. And when she saw what I had done, there was a big rigmarole, because I didn't want to go to the hospital. I thought I was fine. And anyway, I ended up in the hospital, and I ended up in the intensive care unit. And when I was in there, I was lying in the bed, and it was this big quiet place, and there were people all over the place, and I was hooked up to machines, and other people were, and I was looking at them all, and I was thinking, those people are actually sick. There's something wrong with those people. And look at me. I'm just, look at me, like, And I remember, not to be too graphic, but I had thrown up in myself. I had wet myself, and my bowels, everything. And I had a paper gown on, and it was in bits, and I wasn't able to say, can somebody help me? I was just like an animal there, I really was like an animal. And I was like, and it wasn't that people weren't giving me medical treatment, but I was like a dog from the street. Like, what's the point in taking the fleas off it? Because it's only going to go out and pick up fleas again. And I don't always remember this stuff, but that was there. That really happened to me. And it was so demeaning. And when I got out of the hospital and I kind of escaped, I ran away. They were trying to make me go into an alcohol treatment program. And I kind of ran away from the hospital because I was an illegal alien as well. And and as I was going down the street and heading to where I lived, all to the apartment, all I was thinking about was, I wonder where will I get something to drink. That's all. I got in and I was looking for drink and looking for money, and I kept it going for a few weeks after that. And then not even a few weeks, less than a few weeks. About 2 weeks after that happened, I was in a pub, and this woman, she was an Irish woman, and she was a bartender, and she was heavily pregnant. And I had now a job where I got $10 a day and a cup of soup. So I'd have the cup of soup, I'd go with the $10 and I'd drink it. And once I had the $10 in the drink, then I didn't care how I got the drink. Beg, steal or borrow. That was it. I was in. And that's what my life was becoming. And I'd been told I had to go and leave the house. The place I was staying in. And it was all, that's what it was like. And I'd go in and sit in the pub, and I'd think, oh, how am I going to go up to the bar and order this drink? And I'd get up and I'd order the drink, and then I'd order the second one, and it went down like water. And then the third one, I went up, and I had only I put all my coins on the bar and I put them there. And I said, I ordered a pint, and I went and sat back down again. And she came back down with all the coins, and she put them in front of me. And she gave me a pint, and she said, I don't want your money, EILEEN. And I said, no, I'm giving it. And she said, I don't want your money. And I knew that she could see me exactly as I was. I knew that she could see that I was a hopeless and helpless and pathetic person. And I had this moment of clarity. I was looking at that pint, and what I really wanted to do was I wanted to say, well, I don't want your drink. And I wanted to get up and walk out and not go back. But I hadn't that. I needed that drink more than anything. It didn't matter. Didn't matter how humiliating it was. Didn't matter what anyone. I just needed it. And so I sat there, and that was it, And I was, by the end of the night, I was as drunk as I used to steal drinks and beg drinks from people. Who used to give me drink and say, "Would you leave me alone if I get you a drink?" All that sort of stuff, And that night I was walking down the road, and I wanted to kill myself. All I wanted to do was kill myself. And this man walked by, and he was the epitome of good health. I used to take two sides of the road, and the path, and it was hot, and he said, "Oh, sister, you need some help." And I just said, "You fuck off," because that's all I could say. And I begged God that night not to let me kill myself, to keep me away from the third rail in the subway, not to let me near any pills anywhere, not let into a drugstore, not let me find sharp knives, just if I could go to bed and not kill myself. And that night, I went home and I rang Alcoholics Anonymous, and I left a message on the phone. And I don't remember anything I said. I don't remember it. But I came in the next day. I must have told them when I'd be in, and they called me back, and they told me where my first meeting was. They told me there was a meeting, like it was 5-minute walk from my house. And I went to it, and I went into this huge big college in Boston, and I can't remember, an art museum or something. And I walked all around. I walked into this place, and there were all these people chatting, and there was food laid out, and there was, there must have been a couple of hundred people in the room, and it was all. And I thought, no, these aren't the alcoholics. The alcoholics are a room full of men in suits. I must go and find them. And I walked all the empty rooms, and I looked for them, and I looked for them, and I looked for them, and I couldn't find them. And I went back. I said, "Excuse me, do you know where I might find Alcoholics Anonymous?" And he put out his hand, and he said, "You're welcome. This is Alcoholics Anonymous." And I went to a table, and Mossy will tell you how briary I was for the first year. Don't come near me, don't look at me, don't talk to me. And I took all the chairs away from the table and I sat at the table, and there was one old man who must have been about 110. And I looked at him and thought, oh, he could be an alcoholic, because he was kind of falling on the table. But he might be an alcoholic, and I don't know who the rest of them are. And I heard a man that night sharing, and I heard him the night before I left Boston, actually. And there was a man who had lived for longer than I had drank. I think I had just turned 27. He was 57, and he had been drinking for 30 years. And he was talking about drinking when his wife was dying, and how his wife would ask him not to pick up a drink. Please stay home tonight. And he used to want to, and he used to intend to, and he wouldn't. And eventually he went out, and he'd go out every night, and she died. His wife died when he was out, and he was 3 years sober. But he used 3 words that brought me back to my next meeting. He talked about things that I never heard talked about before in the way he talked about them. He talked about needing to drink, and he talked about fear, doubt, and insecurity. They were the 3 words that I heard that were like, I didn't hear anything else, I didn't have a desire to stop drinking. And if anything, I just wanted to drink, I didn't want to get drunk. But I heard, it was like what comes from the heart goes to the heart. And I went back to a meeting the next day, and I haven't stopped coming since. And as Mossy said, well, the first day was the 5th of August, 1989. And on the 12th of August, I celebrated 35 years. And, that journey was it's been such a long journey. And it's been such a joyful journey and such a wonderful journey. It hasn't been easy. As I said, being an alcoholic means that I do believe that my first kind of reaction to everything is an alcoholic reaction. Get over frightened, over angry, over jealous, over everything, always in the extreme. And I come in here to help me to come back into the center. I had no idea how to live. I didn't know how to live. I've done so much. And Mossy used to turn on my mother's door where I was staying, and I was thinking, what the hell is he doing? And he'd say, get into the car, and bringing you to a meeting. And he'd say, how are you? And I'd say, oh, I burnt the beans. He'd say, did you drink? And I'd say, no. And he said, you're fine then. And I'd say, what the fuck is wrong with him? I used to say over and over and over and over again. Because I didn't understand, that this takes time, first of all. And I was damaged from life and from alcohol. And I needed to learn. I had so much to learn. And myself and Chris and Mossy used to hang around together, and we used to go all over the place. And we were very serious, and we were we knew everything and we knew nothing. But it was a great time, the meeting in the car, the meeting, and then the meeting on the way home. And I ended up marrying Chris. Which I never thought that would happen, but he was like my little brother, and Mossy was like my older brother. Mossy was already taken by a great woman, may I add. And I don't really know how to encapsulate the last 35 years. I worked the steps. I worked the program. I learned that I have to put the drink down one day at a time. That's the most important thing. Don't pick up the first drink, no matter what. If you have a good excuse, don't use it. And then it took me about a year to kind of get over the drink, the physical effects, and to be sober, and to find out that I was more scared of the world than I knew, and that I needed an awful lot of help and an awful lot of support. And there's no end. There is no point where Alcoholics Anonymous cuts you off and says, oh, we can't help you anymore, you have to go somewhere else. There is no point where that happens. There is always something that works in here. I worked the steps again and again and again. And I brought all kinds of things into the steps, and I learned who I was. I got to know myself. I made every mistake that could be made. I made it. Myself and Chris got married eventually. When I was pregnant with my second child, we got married, but we did get married. And we bought a house and then bought another house and bought another house and got into all kinds of money troubles. I go to another fellowship as well for that. And had a lot to learn and a lot of growing to do and a lot of figuring out, but oh, so much fun along the way. We have 2 great children, 2 great daughters, and a wonderful granddaughter. In the last couple of years, just at the end of the pandemic, I was diagnosed with cancer. And it was a very, very, really, really hard old station. I had a very aggressive cancer with a high likelihood of return and spread. And I found out on a Thursday and that I had cancer, and I was on the operating table on Friday. And I was in treatment for about a year. And it was very, very, very challenging and really, really difficult. And that's when my program really kicked in, you know. And I learned to keep things very simple. I learned to breathe in and breathe out and do the next right thing. And, you know, truthfully, sometimes the next right thing was to take the next breath. You know, I'd never known what it would be like to not be able to stand up, not be able to talk, not be able to eat, not be able to walk, to be battered, and at the same time to be at peace. And I'm not saying that that's not something that's not true. That is true, you know, that is true, because Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me how to be peaceful. And I learned something that I say to myself all the time, which is the same as one day at a time. You know, I would often be waiting for biopsies to come back and waiting to go in for test results and all kinds of things. And I never once allowed myself to get terrified by anything. And I used to say, and it was kind of like, you know, if there's a tiger in the room right now, run, get out and run fast. But if I'm in the room and there is no tiger in the room, don't spend hours wondering what'll I do if the tiger comes into the room. There's no point. And so I've learned through all that. I say to myself regularly, EILEEN, there's no tiger in the room. And it's very, you know, life has given me an opportunity to be completely with my own thoughts. That's my voice as well. I couldn't speak because of the treatment. But you know, I really, 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 really was alone with my own thoughts. And I was peaceful with my own thoughts because I've learned how to be peaceful in AA. And you know, at the moment, I suppose I'm struggling. I know I am struggling because I was a year in treatment, a year recovering from treatment, and now I'm trying to deal with, you know, I'm still on medication for the cancer that I had, and it's not easy, you know. Sorry, just my life has been turned upside down, and I'm trying to process it, you know, and I'm trying to be okay with not being okay and with not knowing. And I'm I'm with myself, you know, I haven't left myself. I'm breathing in and breathing out, and I'm doing the next right thing. And the other thing, and I'm going to finish on this, from the moment I got sober, my life changed for the better. The $10 that I was getting didn't have to go to drink. I got more hours working. I got more $10. I was able to stay in where I lived. I was able to get home. I was able to buy. I was able to put my life back together the minute I stopped drinking. And the minute I stopped drinking, I was laughing with a friend of mine the other day because there were, I should say that my cognition and memory has been affected by the medication and the chemotherapy in particular. So sometimes I can't find the words, but they're not cockroaches. They were there, and I was in the terrors. But the things that make noise at night in America, the hell, I can't remember what they're called. But anyway, I used to be crickets. There we go. I'd be going, what the hell is that noise? I had never heard them before because I was so drunk. I never heard them. So I'd be sitting up, and it was you know, that's what it was like trying to get sober, and I'd lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. I know what I was going to say. From the moment I stopped drinking, the world opened up. And I have loved every single sober moment I have lived. every single sober moment. And I have been through all kinds of things, including my mother having gone through cancer and, you know, with dementia and me making decisions, going into the operating theatre because I was the only person who could hold her while she was being put under. Extremely challenging stuff, like, you know, really challenging. But I have loved every sober moment I live, and I still do, because I remember what it was like not to be sober. And I remember what it was like to be hopeless. And I remember what it was like for drink to have taken everything and to have no hope. And the minute I walked into an AA room, I got offered everything. You know, I was told, you can have your life back. You can have your life. You have to work at it. You have to work at it. And sometimes working at it is just turning up. Just go to the next meeting. Don't pick up the next drink. And everything will be all right. And I have talked more than I've talked in a very long time. I'm probably going to flop over now. Thank you for listening to me. I swear to God, I didn't think I would talk so long. I don't know who I was fooling, but anyway. Mossy, thank you for asking me. Kathleen, it's so lovely to see you. It's so lovely to see you. And Mossy, my dear good friend, thank you.
Thank you, EILEEN. Thank you very much for sharing. You know, I could identify with so much, and, you know, and as you said, the moment you stopped drinking, you know, your life changed, and so did mine. They said to me, Mick, it gets better. It doesn't mean it gets easier. And that I understood, you know, in recovery. And I was very lucky because I had a wife in Al-Anon, and she helped me a lot, you know, because she went to meetings, and we learned to bring both programs into home. And I had a daughter that went to EILEEN, you know, and so we grew. All of us grew together, and that was wonderful, you know. And they used to say in the group I was in, if Mick can do it, anybody can. And I thought it was a compliment. That's how thick I am. But thank you, EILEEN. Thank you for sharing. And Motti, do you want to say something?
Of course I want to say something. Oh dear, EILEEN, we've had some laughs together, and the amazing thing was, you know, when we got sober together, when we hook up together, we'd try to get 10 quid together to get a packet of cigarettes and throw a bit of gas into the car, and we never ran out of petrol. We never had a bother with the car, and we'd always get to and back. And people talk about God nods or coincidence, and we'd pull up in a strange town, and we'd ask, where's the parochial hall? And somebody would come out and say to us, well, my dad is going there, can you give him a lift? He's waiting for someone to give him a lift. Do you know, how does it happen? And we had some laughs together. And life gives you a beating as well, but to be able to go through it with a smile on your face. I love enjoying life, and I love having a smile on my face and transferring that to other people. And I love tormenting Mick the Ferret as well, you know. So saying all that, EILEEN, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks everyone doing service there. Thanks, Kathleen, for doing your timekeeping. Thanks everyone else. Thanks, Mick, for doing this with me. And of course, thank you, EILEEN. Fantastic share. And we'll let Mick have the last word, because otherwise he'll be given out.
And thank you, EILEEN, very much for a wonderful share. And the yellow card, Motti, could we have that up, please?
Who you see here?
What you hear here?
When you leave here,
let it stay here. Safety of the group. God bless you all. May you have a wonderful evening.
And EILEEN, would you lead us out with the serenity prayer?
I certainly will. And thank you, everyone. It's lovely to meet everyone. And thanks, Mossy, for asking me to do the chair. I'll finish with the serenity prayer. God,
Grant us the serenity,
serenity,
accept the things we cannot change,
courage
to change
things
things,
like that,
and the wisdom to know the difference. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, everyone. I have to go, but thank you.
Thanks again,
Thank you,
Eileen.
Eileen.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Lovely to see everyone. Thank you.
Bye, Eileen. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen.